All right. Well, Mari, sorry, I want to say it in Spanish now.
It's all good.
So this is our week 7 of elcolesigue. I know that you've been watching a little bit in the background some days, but we have lots of teachers joining us. There's quite a few with us live, and then a lot of teachers watch it after the school day.
Very cool.
Go ahead if you want to share your screen, and I'll go ahead and put it in the stream for us. There's a share screen button.
I got you. Yep. There we go. Oh, I'm looking at myself. All right. Well, here we are. I made this doc of resources, and I know, Dominique, you're going to pop it probably in the chats somewhere, but if anyone needs it, it's bit.ly/checkinformspd. And today I'm going to be sharing just my love of Google Forms. I use it all the time in my classroom. And when I say all the time, at least daily, if not 2 or 3 times a day, with my students. And they don't call them Google Forms, they call them Bitleys, because I use Bitly to shorten everything with my kids. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit about how I use this with my kids. So normally, I don't even know what to call it. In normal school, back in the day when we showed up in person, I did daily warm-ups. So the kids would come in every day, and we're one-to-one iPad. So they would open up their iPad and go to the Bitly link, the shortened link to get to the warm-up, hence why they call them the Bitly. And they would do this warm-up. And so it became a routine. I'm a 7th grade science teacher. So those are 12 and 13-year-olds. So you all know just how goofy and crazy and everything that they are. And so they need a couple minutes at the beginning of class to settle in and calm down and kind of get their minds into science. So this warm up, they come in and they fill out their name, what class period they're in, and then a couple questions just so I can check in with them. So I teach 150 students, so 5 classes of 30 kids each. And it's really hard to have those personal conversations with every single kid every single day. And I was finding that really troubling and challenging, which is why I started doing warm-ups this way. So I asked my kids how they slept, how their breakfast or lunch was, and in general, how things are outside of class. And that lets me gauge just how they're doing, if there's any issues that I need to address each day, if there are, I guess, any challenges. Some of my students come from situations where they have challenges that are outside their control. So knowing how they slept or if they've eaten really lets me know if there's anything I can do for them, just to make sure that the school day runs smoothly. And the students that put 1s or 2s on their warm up, I'm not going to call them out in front of the whole class, but I will just kind of look at them a little bit more, or walk over to them, find excuses to just say hi and find something to compliment or praise, just to kind of see, if I can do something to improve their day. And then I also ask them if there's anything else I need to know. And that question has been really powerful in the last 4 years. And I'll get to that in just a second, kind of why this has changed everything for me with teaching. I asked them 3 questions. And so my warm-up does say question 1, question 2, and question 3, because they have to look up at the board and I project the questions every day. I found it's easier for me to change Google Slides and project them up there than edit the Google form every single day. So that's how I handle the warm-up questions. Sometimes they're content related. So I'll ask them something about the lesson from the day before or the week before. Sometimes I'll ask them, what do you already know about a topic? And sometimes I'll just ask goofy questions, like, if you could teleport anywhere right now, where would you go? And so it's just kind of a fun thing to do. As they're responding, I have the spreadsheet up, and I'll show you all that in a few minutes. And so I'll look at the spreadsheet, I'll look at their responses as I'm taking attendance and addressing any issues. I'm lucky because my classroom is the closest to the bathrooms. And so the students that are not in class yet, I'm often looking out my door and encouraging them to hurry up. So, as I'm doing a lot of teacher things, my students are quiet, they're working, hopefully. You know how it is. But yeah, so they're doing that. So back to this anything I need to know question. I started doing this warm up in 2016, so 4 years ago. I started it in, I think, April of that year after trying a few different things. And I landed on this. And in the anything I need to know, I had one particular student who every single every single week, I think for 5 weeks, a different member of her family or close family friend died, which is, for a 12-year-old, that's really traumatic. I mean, one person is difficult enough, but having, I think 5 different people that she was close to, just, I mean, it was week after week. And this is a student who already struggled with attitude and behavior and didn't do her work all the time. And so all of this, because she felt okay telling me about these things, she, she was able to say it in the anything I need to know section of our form. And then I was really able to check in with her and make sure that she was supported. There were some days where she was really upset. And because I knew why, I could say, hey, your academic work isn't as important today. Let's make sure you are okay. The next year, when she was an eighth grader, she got into a lot of trouble. She was in juvenile hall for a couple days for something that she did outside of school. And so it really wasn't looking good for her. But because we already had that relationship and I knew a little bit about her history, our school was able to support her a little bit. And fast forward to now, she's a junior in high school, so 11th grade, and she has A's and B's. She, I think, plays at least one sport. She's a cheerleader, and she just seems really happy and doing well. And every time I see her, she just has a huge smile and a huge hug. And it's not because of me or this form that changed it, but it's these little things that we can do as teachers to make sure our kids are supported and kind of make sure that anything going on in their lives, that we are really there to take care of them, and put their needs before um, the academics sometimes. So that's the warm up form that I used to use every day in my classroom. And there is a template on the Google Doc. So now with this switch to remote learning with my kids, I wanted to keep that same routine because it's something familiar to my kids. So I created a check-in form that is specific to remote learning. And with this form, my students do it once a week. So it counts as their kind of attendance credit. So I know that I can mark them as present for that week, but I don't do it every day. It's too much for them to have to do it every day while we're remote learning, because everyone's family situation is different. So if I can get them to do it once a week, I'm asking similar questions, kind of how are things going, some fun check-ins, like what are you up to, partially because I want to make sure that if they're putting nothing for everything, that could be a concern, or I just, it's fun things to talk about. For example, one of my kids this week wrote that she's reading The Hate U Give, which is a book I loved. And so I was able to message her and be like, hey, how are you loving that book? And this is a student that hasn't been excited about reading before. And so just seeing that, she was reading a book, and a book that could spark some good conversations was really exciting to me. And so, it's these little things that I can maintain those connections with my kids over time. Asking some questions, kind of good things, challenging things, anything else that you need from us. Adding on a few more questions, checking in on the previous week's work, like, did you do your work? If you didn't, why not? And giving them options like, I couldn't access it, I didn't want to. These little things, just to kind of get the kids to be thinking about the previous work and give us some feedback, because not getting that face to face with the kids has been, I miss them. And so being able to make sure that their needs are being taken care of, and if they're not doing their work, why not? And some of them, they're overwhelmed, and so that gives us a avenue to make sure that they are okay. So that's kind of the front side of the form. That's the side that the students fill out. Back with the warm-ups, I use the exact same Google form every single day. So by the end of the school year, that's 4,000 or 5,000 responses, which is a lot of data. So I will talk about managing that data. With our weekly check-ins, I'm doing a different form each week only because we're changing some of the questions, just to kind of change it up, make it look different for the kids. So those are kind of 2 different ways that I've done it. I'm going to pause right here. Dominique, are there any questions that have popped up in the chat?
There haven't been. People are just saying that this is a great way to connect with students. We did have one question from Manuel. He was asking if we could do the session maybe in Spanish next week. So I said that I'm sure someone from our team could help explain forms in Spanish. But we have other people just saying, thank you. This is really good. It's good to remember that we need to connect. Yes. Así que para los que están preguntando para una sesión en español, a ver si la semana que viene hacemos uno en español. But yeah, that's everything.
Perfect. Someday I'll be able to do it in Spanish. I'm not there yet.
It's okay. We will invite you when you're ready.
Yay. Okay, next year. So my kids would be so proud if I presented in Spanish. By the way, just so everyone knows, I teach in San Diego, and my school is about 5 kilometers from the US-Mexico border. So I have a lot of practice understanding Spanish, but I need to keep practicing speaking. So we're getting there. My kids can help me too. So kind of going to the editing side of the Google form, kind of the creation side. Here's that Google form, that same check-in form that we were looking at, except now I'm looking at the side for editing the form. And so kind of give you a little bit of a tour of Google Forms. Up here in the top left, that's the title of the form, but this is the title that shows up in Google Drive. The title down here is the title that everyone that is filling out the form sees. So really the reason why you might have 2 different titles, for me in my classroom, because I reuse, or I will make a copy of a form for year to year. Sometimes up here in the Google Drive title, I'll put spring 2020. So I remember, oh, that was this year's form versus last year's form or the year before. And so that's really, for me, that's how I use those 2 different titles. You can add in a description. So sometimes that's information for students, directions for students for filling out the form. And then we come down here to our questions. So I have, the first question is name. I've definitely made forms that I forgot the name question, and it became just a great anonymous survey. And I just kind of laugh it off and move on. So always, first question, unless you're going anonymous, make sure it's the name. This one is a short answer question. There's a lot of different question types with Google Forms. The text ones, short answer or paragraph text. There's not really much difference with the 2. Paragraph text just lets you see all the text that you put in. Short answer, it keeps going past, and so then you can't see the text from before. So I only use short answer when it's something short, like a name. Paragraph if it's anything longer than a couple words. There's multiple choice questions. So down here, oops, I didn't, because this is the PD one. So there isn't a question for class period. If I did a question for class period, I could, over here on the right side, there's a plus sign to add a question. So I can click the plus and I can call this class period. It's a multiple choice question. So then I can add in an option. So I can delete where it says option 1 and change this to period 1. If I click add option, I can add a second option for period 2. If I wanted to add an other, that would allow people to fill in that response with their own choice as well. If I add a question, I'm like, I don't really want this question in here, I can click delete and delete that question. Other types of questions that are useful down here, though, how are things going this week? I used the linear scale. And so I did on a scale of 1 to 5. You can go all the way up to 10, which is a great way to use, rating type ones. And for the questions where I ask my students, how did they sleep? How was their breakfast or lunch? And how are things in general? I also am using those linear scale questions. Again, I have some long answer questions down here. Other question types that are useful with Google Forms, you can do the multiple choice grid questions, which you set up side by side, but really you have your rows and you have your columns. So a lot of times I'll use this for evaluations. So those types of questions where it's always, sometimes, rarely, never, and then you're saying, how effective was this presentation? How interesting was it? How prepared was the presenter? And so then you can rate them on those scales. Other really helpful ones is the checkboxes. So with multiple choice, you can only select one answer. With checkboxes, you can select as many answers as you want. With drop-down questions, with the drop-down menu, you can, this is great because it'll just make a drop-down list. So if it's a multiple choice question where you have a lot of different a lot of different choices, it just makes the form shorter because you just do a drop-down, just like this. This is a drop-down. So instead of taking up all that space, you can just pop it out, make your selection, and keep moving. The date and time options down here, those are great for, when's a good time for me to call you? When's a good time for us to meet? Those types of questions. However, Google Forms does automatically collect the data or collect the date and time that a form was submitted. So you don't necessarily need to include those in your form unless you have another reason to collect that date and time. Some other fun things that you can add to your form, you can add in titles and descriptions. So up here, this part right here, how are things going this week? This is a title, so I can add a title, I can add a description, but there's no data collected from that. So showing you over here, how are things going this week? This is just a title. I could add a description, but there's no question attached to that one. You can also add in images. So if there's a picture that you want to add in, you can add that in for in class, adding in a diagram for students to describe or analyze. That's really helpful. For my weekly check-in for my kids right now during remote learning, I have a screenshot of the weekly schedule, so they know what class periods they're supposed to be working on at what times, or if their class is going to meet via video chat, what time that would happen. So that's something that I've included in. You can add in YouTube videos as well. The only thing here is if your district or school has YouTube blocked for kids, and they won't be able to see them. And then last, you can add in section breaks as well. So I'll go down here and add a section break. And that just allows you to have multiple pages of your form. So when people would get to the end of this question, then there would be a button to go next, and then they would go to the next section, and I can add in more questions here as well. So I'm going to delete that section because I just want it one single page, all the questions in one place. Another really important thing with Google Forms is you can see right here, there's a red star next to this question. That's because I made this question required. So somebody filling out the form would need to answer that question before they can click submit. This last question, anything that you need from me to help you get through the next few weeks, I did not make that question required. And so it's, it's up to you what questions you want required. I usually make all or most of the questions required, especially on the warm-up, because I don't want my students just putting in their name and clicking submit, because some would definitely do that. Yeah. I think that's kind of the basics of creating a Google form. Some other fun stuff, you can customize the theme, so you can change the color. You can change your fonts as well. Here where it says image uploaded, Google Forms has a lot of different cool images that you can set as the header image to make it look pretty. It's just a fun way to change up your form, make it look extra cool. I like playing with the themes as well, and I try to change the theme each week just so that it makes it look fun, and so that also my kids know which one is the new one each week. For sending it to students, there's a couple different ways we can send our forms to our students. The send button up in the top right, if I click send, you can send it via email. I'm not going to type in all 150 of my students' emails each week, but if you're just sending it to one person, you can type in somebody's email, it will send it to them and they can fill it out. You can also get the link to your form. And so you can copy that and paste it into an email or website or Twitter, wherever else you are doing that. There is an option to shorten it, but it's still pretty long. And for my students, that's way too long and complicated for them to type in, which is why I use Bitly, the link shortener. And so and I'm able to customize the end of that URL so that I can send it out to my kids and they can type it in right away as well. So I found that to be very helpful. If you're using Google Classroom, you can attach a Google form to an assignment on Google Classroom, just like you would any other thing like a doc or slides. It looks like you're attaching this version, the version to edit, but Google Classroom is smart. It knows that if you attach a form, the version the students will see is this version. They'll see the one that they're supposed to fill out, not the editing. So it's a little scary the first time you attach a Google form to a Google Classroom assignment, because you're like, there's no option for students can edit or students can view or make a copy for each student. So just so you know, it does give the students the side to edit or to fill out the form. So right now with remote learning, I'm using Google Classroom to send out all of my Google Forms to students. And so that has worked out really nicely for us. So just on the editing side, Dominique, are there any questions or things that I need to show again on just the editing side? And then I'll get to responses.
Yeah, I don't think we have questions. We had Ana Luisa was saying, she said she likes sharing them in Google Classroom, like you were talking about. And then also Maria del Rosario, she was just telling us that you can also, for anybody who has a Google group formed, that's another way that she can then send her students an email in a group. So
awesome. Yeah. If you paste that group email into the two, then it'll send to the whole group. Yep. So that's awesome. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but no other questions other than that. So thanks, Mari.
Perfect. One thing that I forgot to mention here is, so you have the send button, which is confusing because a lot of times we see in anything Google, like the big button in the top right must be share. In this case, it's not. So to add somebody so you can work together on a form, you have to click on your dots and then add collaborator, and then it comes up with the sharing screen. So you can start typing in somebody's email address and then share it to them, so that you can both edit that form as well. So that's how you share a Google form so two people can work together, which is awesome. So moving over to the responses. So you send out a Google form to your students, and then now you have all this data. What do we do with it? You'll see in my responses tab over here to the right, I have 333 responses because I've used this for different PDs during remote learning. So if I click on responses, you'll see that I have 333. It shows all the emails. So let me skip through those and names, just because those are other people. And then we come down to here. So I asked the question, how are things going this week? And I had people respond on a 1 to 5 scale. So Google Forms makes this really nice graph of all the data. So I can hover over and see that 37 people, or 11.1%, marked a 5, 95, 28.5% of people marked a 4. If somebody were to fill this out right now while I'm showing it, it'll automatically update the graph as well, which is really cool when you're looking at data and wanting to get a good picture of it. You can copy that chart. So if I click the copy, it'll copy to my clipboard. I can paste it into a doc or into slides, so then I can easily share that data with other people. So this graph is nice. However, when I look at the free response questions where I said, what are you reading this week? And it's a lot to scroll through. That's, I can't keep track of that. Now that we're at 333 responses, it's just too much. And so that's where the Google Sheet comes in. So every single Google form comes with a Google Sheet. So up here, there's a green box, and it will say create response sheet the first time. When I click view responses in Sheets, it's going to open up in a new tab a Google Sheet that includes all of the data. So I hid the columns for name and email address, just so we don't put anyone on blast here. But then you can see I have a column for timestamp. So these are all of the responses that came in. And actually, I need to resort this as I'm showing somebody how to sort. There we go. Okay, so here's all the responses that have come in. So you see that there's a timestamp. So starting on April 3rd, 2020 at 11:04 and 22 seconds. So it goes down to the 100th of a second, which is really fun if you're doing a scavenger hunt on Google Forms, because you can really figure out who won. And I've had things come down to the 100th of a second before. So that's kind of cool. So you have the timestamp automatically. It tells you when people fill that in. And so, that's easy. But then I think it's easier to see what are you reading this week? It's easier for me to see it through the spreadsheet, so I can look at those different things. So row 10 would be one person's response. So this person marked themselves a 2. They're reading Stephen King's The Outsider, and then I can read the rest of their responses as it goes across as well. So I find this easier to look at, especially when my students are filling it out. I'll just have it open and then scroll down to the bottom. And it's a lot of scrolling. So I'll scroll down and kind of watch it as they're coming in, and then kind of mark if there's anything I need to do with that. So for example, right here, this response, so say, oh, what are you reading this week? Oh, they're reading Harry Potter. Hey, guess what? Me too. So I'll come up to my paint bucket and I'll fill that in with green. And that reminds me, hey, that's something good that I need to follow up with a kid. Versus over here, I saw one right here. I didn't sleep very well last night and was super restless. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, that's a student that maybe needs some extra support. Maybe if they're tired or grumpy, that I'm a little bit more patient with them. So I'll come over here to the fill, and I'll fill that with one of the reds. And so then that reminds me, okay, I need to go over to this student and just make sure that they're okay. And so that's kind of how I look at the data. It is a lot of responses. And even when we're at 333 responses, that was a lot of scrolling that I have to do. So with my kids, or in my classroom, I will go to the previous week's responses and I will hide those responses. So to hide responses, so instead of deleting it just so that I have a record of previous weeks and previous data, I'll click on the first row I want to hide and then shift and say I want to end here. I'll shift and click to highlight all of those rows. I'll right click on the rows and I'll do hide rows. And so now it goes 1 to 115. So those rows are hidden. If I want them to come back, I'll click on the arrows here and it'll expand those. But that helps with loading that spreadsheet when it's 2,000 or 3,000 pieces of data, it can take a really long time to load. But by hiding those rows that we don't need from previous weeks, again, so I select all those rows, right click, click hide rows, it makes it load faster, and then I can really get to exactly where we are in the data. And so that helps me keep track of the data, keep track of students. And then if there's any issues that I need to address, sometimes it's, hey, Miss V, you marked this student absent on this day, but none of their other teachers did. I can go back and see, did they fill out their warm up that day? And that's the first thing I try to prove if a student was present. And then if they didn't fill it out, but they're like, no, I was there. I'm like, well, I use your warm ups to double check attendance too. And so that reminds them that this is important. One little fun thing, those of you that have used sheets before, the way I got all the colors to look like this is with conditional formatting. So conditional formatting is awesome because I can turn all the numbers into colors. So now I don't have to read a long list of numbers. I can just look for colors. So I'm looking for dark green. Okay, these people are 5s. If I find an orange or a red, okay, that's a 2 or a 1. And I'm really able to more quickly find that information. So to set up to set up conditional formatting, I will click on the column that I want to set it up for. So it highlights the entire column. I'll go to Format and Conditional Formatting. You would click Add a Rule. I already have the rule set up. So I'll show you. I picked color scale. There is an option for color scale here, and it goes green to red. But what that does is it makes the 5s a red and the 1s a green, which is, I want the opposite. So all I'll do is come over here to minimum value and change that, the paint bucket to red. And then over to max value, I'll change that to green and I'll click done. And so now I have my color scale with conditional formatting that goes red to green. It just makes it much easier to see that data really quick and kind of get an idea. I've noticed patterns with my kids, first period, either they come in pretty sleepy, so they rate themselves lower on how to do sleep. After lunch, my afternoon classes, a lot of times they rate themselves a lot lower on how was your breakfast or lunch, because some of them just don't eat at school for whatever reason, because they don't like the food or whatever their reasons are for not eating. And so, I'm able to really see. And if my kids haven't eaten, then they are usually a little bit more unfocused. And so, that's something I can check in with them. If I'm noticing a pattern, I'm really able to say, hey, how come you're not eating? Oh, you don't have access to, you don't know your number to type in, your PIN to type in to get lunch. Well, I can fix that for you. Or, whatever the issues are. So, it's really helped me get some good, I guess, just knowledge about my kids and how I can better help them. And so that's yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but we have a couple people asking or also just wondering if you could talk a little bit maybe about some of the add-ons like Flubaroo or other things that you can use with a Google Sheet. A couple people were asking about that. Like, what else can we do?
Cool. Yeah. So Flubaroo was awesome. And I say that past tense because now in Google Forms, you can turn things into a quiz automatically. And so, so coming back to the editing side of my form, if you click on settings and go to quizzes and make this a quiz, then you can turn it automatically into a quiz, and you can have multiple choice questions grade automatically. You can grade the short answer or long answer questions yourself. That could be a whole session, Dominique, too. And I'd be happy to come back and do a whole thing about quizzes in Google Forms because I love using forms for quizzes. Other add-ons that I love with Google Sheets, I think roll call is awesome. I could set it up. If I click on roll call and I click start, so I highlighted column D, and what that would do is I would do how are things this week? So this is a question where it was a multiple choice. And when I click sort or update, it'll make new sheets. So for everyone that marked a 1, it would make a sheet. For everyone that marked a 2, it would make a sheet. I've used this for like surveys of all of my classes, and then I'll do the class period one with roll call. And so then I can see only period one's responses in one sheet, and then period 2 in another, period 3 in another. And so that's one that I really love. I mean, you can filter, so you can go data and, not filter views. You can just filter the data. Where are we? Right here. Oops. Oh, see, I just clicked roll call and it did it. So now it's updating. So now it's going to be going back and forth and giving us a really back and forth view. So I'm going to let it do its thing. Another one that I really love, I use a lot, is Formule and Autocrat. And so that mail merges responses. So then you can email people their responses. That's one I really love. I think those are the ones that I use the most often, at least in Google Sheets. And I know we're just wrapping up. Dominique, are there any more questions, things you want me to show?
I see here that Juan Manuel is just commenting, saying that with this type of check-in with our students, this really helps active listening. And this would help just create awareness or indicators to help maybe bullying situations that are happening when a student doesn't want to talk to you, or like even sexual abuse he was saying, or other cases where they need urgent intervention. And I know as a student, I was very shy to talk to teachers, but if I had something like this where I could write, I would say so much more. And I think that's what he's referring to.
Oh, definitely. And you're right on there. There's anything I need to know. Students have told me about being bullied, other, challenging situations that they're facing at home. And I think they're kids that wouldn't have come up to me and say it, but I can read it there, and then I can immediately, email or call a counselor at school and be like, hey, I'm sending this kid over. And here's what just happened. And, I think the kids are really appreciative that they do have a way to say those things. So, and I think that also hits on that emotional intelligence for our kids too. Because with middle school kids, they just are, they're really happy and then really sad. And they're just like, there's so many emotions, and they don't know what to do with it. And that's fine. That's normal. That's part of life. But when they're able to see, okay, I didn't sleep well and I didn't eat and I'm not doing good. Maybe that's why I'm having a hard time focusing today, and really being able to have those conversations where they're able to name their emotions. And you don't have to control it, but if you can name, I feel angry right now, or I feel frustrated, then, they're able to hopefully do a little bit better.
Yeah. And I think now maybe even more so, like it's really important to be checking in with our students. And I know a lot of cases all around the world right now, people are, sorry about the sound outside, people are worrying, like maybe lost jobs. So maybe their parents lost their jobs. And so if they're even asking them this, if they're not eating, if they're not sleeping, like it also gives us, a clue, okay, something's happening. I need to check in or get some help for that student. I know we've seen that happening here in Mexico. And so I think it's a good reminder for us.
Definitely. And as teachers and in the school, we're able to, if we don't have the resources at school, we know who does, or we know who to ask. And I think definitely with lost jobs or needing food, that's something that we can help our kids with.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a couple other comments here. Maria del Rosario is talking about an auto-graded quiz, un cuestionario autocalificable. She says it's super. And like Google's just thinking about everything to help us right now. Maria del Rosario is also saying, and beyond that, you can block it if they're using a Chromebook, so they're not looking in other tabs. So yeah, I definitely think we could use a session on quizzes. But yeah, and then she also just says, I recommend this 200%.
I do too. I love forms.
So we have a lot of fans in the audience today, but thank you so much, Mari, for being with us today. And we hope to see you again during our last week. So I'll let you go. I know you have to teach today, I'm assuming.
Yeah, luckily my student teacher is teaching at 10, so I just have to show up and be there.
Very nice.
Weird time to student teach.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'll let you go.
Thank you.
Bye. Muy bien, pues gracias por estar con nosotros, todos los que siguen con nosotros. Espero ya me dio ánimo Ana Luisa y los que estaban platicando ahí, a ver si la semana que viene hago una sesión en español de los formularios de Google para las dudas o las preguntas que tenían. Pero para terminar el día de hoy, les quería enseñar, a ver, déjame compartir mi pantalla con ustedes. Estaba, de hecho, al principio hoy, no sé si estaban conmigo, pero les había compartido un enlace a un formulario justamente que había hecho. Así que los quiero invitar de nuevo a llenar este formulario conmigo. Ahorita se va a poner en la pantalla. Está cargando. Mi internet ha sido súper lento el día de hoy. Creo que ya está cansando de tantos webinars en que ando ahorita. Pero es bit.ly/cole retro. Y ahí estamos preguntándoles, nos encantaría ver cuáles son los temas que más quieren ver la semana que viene. Solo nos queda una sola semana del elcolesigue, así que realmente queremos estar dándoles los mejores recursos, lo que ustedes quieren para terminar súper bien. A ver si hacemos una fiesta o algo virtual el viernes que viene. Así que favor de llenar este formulario conmigo. Y también les quería invitar para que vean el horario el día de mañana. Tenemos muy buenas sesiones. Mañana está regresando nuestro querido George, también es de California, también es amigo de Mari y de muchos con quien hemos estado trabajando. Así que mañana, en hora de España, tenemos George como a las 5:15, hora de México, va a ser como a las 10:15 y hora de Chile va a ser a las 11:15. Después de él, tenemos algo súper, súper especial para ustedes. Tenemos un foro, hemos invitado a varios directores de tecnología o de escuelas que ya han estado usando esas herramientas para ver cómo van, para darnos consejos, sugerencias y para animarnos a todos. Así que va a ser súper padre. O como Ana Luisa dice que yo digo, va a ser chidísimo esta sesión del foro. Les invito que vengan con nosotros con todas tus preguntas para que realmente sí podemos estar en comunicación viendo cómo van con todo eso de la contingencia, qué han aprendido, qué quieren ver, qué les falta, porque sabemos que todavía puede ser que hay cosas que les están como faltando, herramientas, conocimiento, lo que sea. Así que esos son los horarios, elcolesigue.tv. Y sí, muy bien, Ana Luisa. Sí, estamos muy emocionados que regrese George con nosotros. De hecho, mañana creo que va a ser algo, si recuerdo bien, algo de artistas, algo de diseño gráfico, en caso si están pensando de qué será su sesión. Y nada más para recordarles una vez más, eso es el enlace bit.ly/cole retro. Y ya lo puse en el chat hace rato, lo puedo poner de nuevo ahorita. Pero si entran ahí, realmente sí queremos darles lo mejor de lo que tenemos para la semana que viene. Para darles una idea, algo rápido, hago un resumen si me dejan aquí de los formularios de Google. Eso es lo que Mari nos estaba enseñando rápidamente en inglés. Y aquí está un formulario en español del elcolesigue retro, gracias a las 7 personas que ya lo han contestado. estamos preguntando cosas súper sencillas. ¿Cuál es tu nombre? Ya agregué una pregunta ahorita. ¿En cuál país vives? ¿Cómo calificas el elcolesigue? ¿Qué talleres te gustaría ver? ¿Y de qué herramientas de Google has aprendido? ¿Y cómo te sientes hoy? Y nada más voy a poner aquí algo de, quiero ver más que todo, quiero ver qué talleres les gustaría ver. Y dicen algunos, a ver, manejo del estrés educativo y en casa. Es muy buena sugerencia. También funciones más avanzadas de las apps. Ok, eso también puede ser algo muy bueno ver, porque hemos visto cosas súper básicas, pero ahora están pidiendo cosas más avanzadas, así que está muy bien. Un taller por día para hacer ejercicio y resolver dudas de dispositivas interactivas y fortalecer el uso de Classrooms y Meet. Eso también es súper buena sugerencia porque sabemos que muchos de nosotros ya estamos usando Classroom y Meet ya diario con nuestros alumnos. A ver si podemos ver como el buen uso de eso. Los grupos de Google también lo mencionó Mari y también María del Rosario mencionó que eso es buena herramienta. A ver, también quieren ver intervenciones más interesantes, trucos o tips. Muy bien. Administración de la consola. Ya hemos tenido 2 sesiones de eso, hecho por nuestro querido Gabriel, pero eso sí es muy buena sugerencia para ver más de eso, más cosas técnicas. Y Kaizena también, me encanta herramienta para la retroalimentación. Así que muchísimas gracias. Veo que han estado aprendiendo de muchas cosas por aquí. Gracias por estar con nosotros día tras día, porque realmente, aunque todo está diferente ahorita, el cole sigue y sabemos que estamos aprendiendo, estamos esforzando. Y ya con eso les voy a despedir para el día de hoy. Les voy a poner ahí un video y ya con eso nos vemos mañana. Muchísimas gracias.